Hey everybody, I'm Joey, and today we're going to talk about the beef tenderloin, aka the filet mignon. Look, this cut of beef is often regaled as the king of steaks, and when you go to any steakhouse, it will likely be one of the priciest steaks on the menu. But guess what? You can make it right at home. In this video, we'll share tips, tricks, and recipes that you can use to turn up the tasty right in your own kitchen. We'll show you how to take an entire beef tenderloin and break it down into chateaubriand, roast, and other filet mignon cuts, including a petite filet. We'll share recipes that show you how to make filet mignon in a cast iron skillet, how to grill an entire roast, or use those petite filets for some incredible steak and eggs. Talk about starting your morning off right. So follow me and let's turn up the tasty. I bought this 9-pound behemoth from Costco, and I'll show you how to go from this bag of beef to a dinner that will leave your guests raving. This large beef tenderloin produces many cuts of beef, like the chateaubriand and more commonly, the filet mignon. Now, this is a whole untrimmed tenderloin, which I bought for about $12 a pound, and I'm gonna trim it myself. Now, if you buy the same tenderloin pre-cut into fillets, you're gonna pay north of $20 a pound. Now, the first thing we need to do is get set up. I have a cutting board, a flat blade knife, some paper towels, and a plate. Next, we wanna get the beef out of the bag, and technique is important even here. If you open this bag wrong, these juices will end up all over you, and you'll look like carry-on prom night. So the first thing we're gonna do is lay it flat and pinch the top of the bag like this and make an incision all the way down. Once it's removed, I'm going to discard this bag with the juices still in there and use these paper towels to pat it dry. This just makes it easier to work with by drying off some of that purge. That's that leftover juice that's in the bag. As you can see, there is a lot of fat and silver skin on this cut. That silver skin is chewy and basically inedible. This is not something we want on our final product, so we're going to remove it. We're going to go ahead and clean it up. However, before we do that, we need to trim away the chain. It's this part right here, and it has a lot of fat and connective tissue, so we need to remove it. You can almost follow the line with your hands and get in there with your knife and just remove this portion. This is really good meat, so don't discard it. Most people will tell you just to grind it up for burgers, but if you don't have a grinder, you can trim it up for some awesome Philly cheesesteaks or tacos. Just go ahead and set it aside for now. Next, we're gonna continue to clean it up. Now right here, this is all that silver skin I was talking about. As you can see, it's right here. It's kind of shiny, kind of silver. That's where it gets its name. And what we're gonna do, we're just gonna do the best we can, is we're gonna make a little incision right down here at the end. Take some work. Get in that silver skin. Open it up like that. Now, we're gonna come the other way with that knife at the 45-degree angle. Just do our best to remove as much as we can without removing the beef. As you can see, it's nice and clean, looks much more like a tender, edible filet that we're used to seeing. Let's go ahead and get the rest of this off. All right, now we have this totally cleaned up. As you can see, there's a little bit of fat remaining. I don't try to get it all off. This is actually edible, but the silver skin is removed. Now we have a decision to make. How many people are you gonna cook for? You'll need about a ½ pound per person, and you can cook this thing whole cleaned just like this, but this thin end down here is gonna cook much faster than this thick end over here. So in order to get it medium rare here, you're gonna have it well done over here. So our solution is we're gonna tie this meat up so it cooks at an even temperature. Tying it up will bring those muscle fibers together and allow it to cook, again, all very evenly. We're gonna wrap this tail portion underneath here just to create that even thickness throughout. So once we have it like that, we're gonna take this string right here and we're gonna begin to tie. I'm not gonna show you how to do a full butcher's tie. That's can be a little bit complicated, but we're just gonna do a very simple tie, just like this. Wrap it around a few times, and then just bring that together like so. Get it nice and tight. Let's do a little double knot, and repeat. Now this is an absolutely gorgeous piece of meat, and it's gonna look tremendous sitting on your dining room table for all your guests. If you're cooking for a crowd, this is certainly the way to go, but we're cooking for a little smaller crew today, so I'm gonna show you how to cut this up into more manageable serving sizes and have some leftover filet mignon for a nice dinner, or some nice petite fillets for some steak and eggs. No matter which way you cook it, whole like this or trimmed up, the recipe from here is gonna be the exact same. So follow me and let's get started. In addition to the chain, which I removed earlier, there's another muscle right here at the top on the thick end that is separated by some fat. The first thing I'm gonna do is just go ahead and remove this. And I'll tell you what to do with this in just a moment. Do not throw it away. This is perfectly good meat. Since we're cooking for that small crew today, I'm gonna cut some of this into fillets, and I'll leave this center cut roast for throwing on the grill. This is gonna be about a 3-pound roast, and it tastes just tremendous. We're using this smaller cut, as I mentioned earlier, but you could use the whole roast uncut and tied. The recipe is exactly the same. As you can see, this looks just like a perfect store-bought beef tenderloin in its whole form. Look at that. It's easy to see where the fillets come from, and that's just what we're gonna do now. We're gonna cut off some 8-ounce fillets. Now, as you can see, we have some nicely cut fillets over here. These are about 8 ounces. This is about 6 ounces. And right here, this is that muscle I removed. As you can see, this is incredibly good meat. Next thing we're gonna do is just like we did with the whole fillets, we're just gonna tie this up just to bind those muscle fibers closer together, allow for some nice even cooking. Once this is tied up, we're gonna go ahead and get this in a bag to marinate. All right, now that this is cut, it's ready to go. The next thing I wanna do is I wanna marinate this for at least 2 hours, preferably overnight if I have the time. So I'm gonna get it in a gallon bag here, and then wash my hands before I touch this bottle. Food safety is no accident, ladies and gentlemen. So here I have a marinade that I bought from my local butcher. You can use whatever you like or make your own marinade using some red wine, garlic, and Worcestershire Zerzer. It will turn out great. But again, I like to get this here in the bag so we can let this marinate for about 2 hours. And then I'm gonna go ahead and get it right in the fridge. But the important thing is you wanna remove this and let this sit at room temperature for about an hour before cooking it. That will help promote nice, even cooking throughout. So I'm gonna get this in the fridge and we'll be right back to finish it up and get this tender, tasty cut of meat on the grill. Okay, so this was marinating in the fridge for about 2 hours. We pulled it out and it's been sitting here on this plate resting for an additional hour, just like I told you. We're gonna get some additional seasoning on it, but before we do, I just wanna go ahead and pat this a little bit dry. Some of that off because we're going to use some oil and we really want it to stick on there. So get that. All right, now we're ready to season. In here I have about 2 tablespoons of chopped rosemary, a tablespoon of thyme, and 2 tablespoons of chopped minced garlic. We're going to add about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And let's go ahead and get this mixed up and onto this tenderloin. Look at that. That looks absolutely fantastic. Just gonna spoon this over and get our hands a little bit messy here as we get this on all sides. All right, I don't know if we cut it all on film, but I have been washing my hands a lot throughout this video. So we're about ready to get this on the grill. We're just gonna hit it with a little bit of our Big Tasty Steak Rub. This is a simple rub we created using common ingredients found in most kitchens. Probably yours too. We've included a link in the description below. You can use this or season it with whatever you like, but we're gonna go ahead and apply this thoroughly on both sides. Give it that nice crust as it cooks and add a lot of additional flavor. Let's go ahead and get it in there. All right, one final wash of the hands, and then we're gonna get this on the grill. Food safety is no accident, ladies and gentlemen. You guys hear that at home? That right there is a sound of tasty. So I want to talk a little bit about what we got going on here. We have a 2-zone fire. This is a thick cut, so it can't cook over direct heat the entire time. We're searing it over this blazing hot fire on this side for 2 minutes per side, and I'm saying that there's 4 sides. We're gonna rotate it 4 times, and then we're gonna move it over here to this indirect heat and allow it to finish its cooking. So we have these blazing hot rockwood charcoals. They light fast and burn hot. And to impart a little additional flavor, I added some soaked apple chips, which will add a nice smoky note to this as it cooks. All right, now we're ready for our first flip. Okay, that fire's going a little bit hotter than I want it, so I'm gonna go ahead and close the lid to get that flame down just a little bit. We're gonna let it cook for two minutes, real nice and hot. As you can see, that high flame really seared the top of it, but that's not really burnt. That just creates some nice additional flavor that will meld into the steak as it cooks over indirect here. Because those flames are a little higher than I want, I'm just gonna go ahead and close this up for about another minute. Just bring the temperature down just slightly. All right, look at that smoke. This has been cooking for a total of 8 minutes, 2 minutes per side. So we're gonna flip it over here to the indirect heat. Oh, look at that. That looks fantastic. So that had an internal temperature of about 60 degrees. We really need to get that to 125 to 130 degrees for that perfectly cooked medium rare temperature. We don't want this overcooked. So we're gonna come back and check it every 7 or 10 minutes. Usually takes about 30 to 40 minutes to get it done. It really all just depends upon how hot the fire is. So on these grates right here, I have them about halfway open. It's starting to real hot, feels like it's about 400 degrees right now, but because the Weber isn't great at holding heat for a prolonged period of time, that temperature is gonna come down as it cooks, closer to about 300. That's totally fine. Again, the main thing is we want the internal temperature of that roast at 125, 130 degrees. So grab a beer, throw in some sports bets, watch the big game, and we'll be right back. All right, so this cooked to an internal temperature of 130 degrees. We pulled it off and it's been resting here for about 10 minutes. So now we're gonna cut it open, cut it into thin little slices about 1/4 inch thick. And it's so good, your guests are gonna be very impressed with your cooking skills. Actually, the hardest part is going to be leaving some of this left over for some of them to eat and not taking it all yourself. But let's see how it looks. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this real thin. Look at that. All right, there we go. It's got an awesome color. Look at all that juice coming out of there. That is fantastic. So look at that. Great color on the inside. We got a little bit of heat over here, a little bit more well done over there. But this is gonna be a very tender and flavorful cut of steak. Let's check it out. Wow, that is absolutely fantastic. This is absolutely going to knock the socks off your guests. I've been eating eggs for nearly 40 years. Scrambled, fried, sunny side up, sunny side down, poached, omelets, hard boiled, you name it, I've had it and you probably have too. The one thing that the egg lacks is flavor. They're bland and that's the bad news. The good news is that it pairs well with a variety of flavor profiles and can be used as a blank canvas to turn up the tasty. But again, more bad news here, because despite their versatility, most people only use salt and pepper for seasoning, and S&P is the lazy man's option. Throw a dash on in the morning, eat your bland eggs, call it a day, and head out for another boring day at the office. But not me. No, sir, I won't be satisfied with the status quo. I want to set myself free from the shackles of mediocrity, and I want to free you too. But before we get to the eggs, let's start with this steak. There's a lot of videos out there showing you a huge steak with 2 eggs, and that's not really practical if you're feeding people or if you're actually looking to stay awake after breakfast. Now, we recently published a video showing you how to break down an entire beef tenderloin. When you watch that video, you'll see that there are several petite fillets that come from the trimming. Now, these petite fillets really are little giants, so to speak, and they're perfect for steak and eggs. They're lean and just so tender. And if you don't have filet, well, just use another tender steak. Cut it into strips about a 1/2 inch thick, fajita style, for smaller portions and quicker cooking. But now let's get to the seasoning. The first thing we're gonna do is season these steaks with a Big Tasty steak rub. It's a simple rub we created ourselves using common ingredients found in most kitchens, probably yours too. We've included the link in the description below. We want to get these seasoned thoroughly on both sides. Okay, so I added 1 tablespoon of olive oil, 1 tablespoon of butter. I've let that melt, and as you can see at home, it's nice and hot. We got some steam coming right off the pan. That tells me it's time to go ahead and drop these steaks in the pan. They won't take long to cook at all, maybe about 2 minutes per side. And just like with any filet mignon, we want to make sure we don't overcook them. So let's go ahead and drop them in now. Oh, now you guys know, if you've watched these videos, that right there is the sound of tasty. And we have a couple different size fillets. I mean, these are just really petite fillets left over from the trimmings of our full beef tenderloin. And I mention that because they're all a little bit different shapes and sizes. You may have to pull 1 or 2 of them off before the other ones are done. So now that we got those in there, we're gonna let those cook. Now, if I were making this at home without making a video, I'd actually be doing the steak and the eggs at the same time. But for ease of filming, I'm gonna go ahead and get these cooked all the way through first, and then we'll jump over and I'll show you how to make some change your life eggs. All right, we cooked these steaks here for a total of about 5 minutes, and we're just gonna let them cool, and we're gonna make the eggs, all right? Let's set those to the side. Now, here's the bottom line. With eggs, you're gonna need some fresh herbs to really bring up the flavor profile of those eggs. We recently published a video on how to make chimichurri sauce. It's a flavorful sauce with a little bit of a quirky name, but we've included a link in the description below. This is absolutely necessary to create really flavorful eggs, and if you do this, you'll become the CEO of your company and you'll be wallpapering your house in $100 bills every weekend, I promise. So let's go ahead and get started on these eggs. We already got this heating up just a little bit, but the first thing I like to do is just get a little bit of salted butter and just get it in there, let it melt down a little bit, all right? Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna wait. I'm only using one side of the pan, so that's all I'm gonna butter. I'm gonna turn up the heat, get that nice and hot. All right, while that's heating, we're gonna take a little bit of this chimichurri sauce right here, and we're just gonna throw it down. Get that right on top of the butter, right like that. When we crack the eggs, we're gonna crack them on this side right on top of the chimichurri. It's gonna be absolutely fantastic. Now you can really make whatever kind of eggs you like to make. We're gonna go with sunny side up, but you can go sunny side down. Even scrambled omelets, this works well any way you're gonna make your eggs, all right? So here we have 2 eggs. I'm gonna take them now that we got this going nice and hot like. You can hear it bubbling. Actually, I'm gonna turn, it's a little bit too hot, so I'm gonna turn that down. Now to about a 7 out of 10. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get these cracked and right in there. Look at that. Are you guys getting hungry yet? I mean, this is the breakfast of champions, as they say. Next, we're gonna go ahead and get this egg in here. All right, and we're just gonna go ahead and let those cook. And what I like to do is, you'll see, in order to promote even cooking, I just like to break them up where they're a little bit thick. Let them get nice and thin all the way around. All right, we're gonna let those cook for just about a minute. I'm gonna wash my hands and I'll be right back. Also, I'm not gonna avoid the salt and pepper here. I'm just adding the chimichurri in addition to it. So a little bit of salt and, excuse me, a little bit of pepper. Now you can see these are getting ready to get done. So here's what I like to do next for sunny side up. I'm gonna take them and I'm just gonna inject just a little bit of water here, like so, and then close it up and let that steam cook those eggs sunny side up. So good. All right, now we're done. Turn that off. Open it away from you so you don't get any of that popping oil. Get these here on a plate. Just like that. Look at that, perfect sunny side up. All that chimichurri, which has some awesome garlic, baked right in there. But we're not gonna stop there, because remember, we have the steak, so follow me. All right, guys, so we're almost done. The eggs are right here. They look absolutely fantastic. And now I know some of you like to see how this steak is done. So let's cut into it and check the final temperature. Look at that, an incredible medium rare. That looks absolutely fantastic, but we're not gonna stop there. See, we have this chimichurri. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna get a little bit on top of our steak here. Oh, look at that. You know what the heck, we're gonna go with a little bit more on top of our eggs, just for fun. Look at that, so good. Now, let's see how it tastes. We're gonna do a little bit of the steak right here. That's a huge bite. Go a little bit smaller so you don't have to watch me talk with my mouth full the entire time. And look at these eggs. Oh man, I can't wait. The garlic inside this chimichurri tastes absolutely phenomenal. Get them together just like that. Wow. All that flavor from the chimichurri into the eggs and the steak is absolutely tremendous. Like I said, when you make this, you're gonna go from minimum wage to top wage in no time. Today, we're combining one of the most desirable cuts of beef available, the filet mignon, with one of the most versatile pans in the kitchen, the cast iron skillet. The cast iron is so versatile because it can be used on any number of heat sources, everything from the campfire to the grill to the stove and to the oven. And as a matter of fact, we'll be using both the stove and the oven to cook this steak perfectly today. As I've said before, if you don't already own a cast iron skillet, well, you should pause this video right now and go buy one from our store at redmeatlover.com. You'll be glad you did. If you don't know what a filet mignon is, well, you've really been missing out. It's one of the most tender steaks available, like melt in your mouth tender. It's so tender, the filet comes from a larger cut known as the tenderloin, which is a pretty creative name, right? It's also a very lean steak. There's not a lot of fat or marbling, but remember, that's where steak gets its flavor. So if you buy this steak at a restaurant, it's not uncommon to see it served with a sauce or gravy to promote some additional flavor. If you buy it at the store like I did, it's not uncommon to see the steak wrapped in bacon like it is right here. And that bacon fat will help promote some additional flavor as this steak cooks. We've talked about the filet mignon before in our porterhouse video. As you'll remember, the filet portion comprises one side of a porterhouse or a T-bone steak. This side right here. As a matter of fact, the only difference between a porterhouse and a T-bone steak is that the porterhouse has a noticeably larger filet portion. This filet mignon is simply this part of the steak cut away from the bone. Now, before we get started, there's a couple other tips to remember about cooking your steak. The one I say every single video, be sure to let your steak rest for at least 20 to 30 minutes at room temperature prior to cooking. And guys, this is such an easy step, it literally takes no work. There's no reason why you should skip it. Allowing your steak to rest will promote an evenly cooked steak that will provide more predictable and consistent results every time you cook. The other thing is about seasoning. Today, we're gonna go ahead and season this steak with our Big Tasty Steak Rub. Our Big Tasty Steak Rub is a simple combination of Spice is commonly found in most kitchens, including garlic and onion powder, kosher salt, coarse ground pepper, some paprika, and even some beef bouillon, which will promote some additional flavor as this steak cooks. Not only will it add some additional flavor, but this seasoning will help promote a brown, crusted, and tasty exterior as this steak sears in the cast iron skillet. So now that we've explained what the filet mignon is, we're ready to cook. The very first thing you need to do is preheat your oven to 435 degrees and let that achieve temperature before starting anything else. As I said, we're gonna use both the cast iron on the stove and then we're gonna transfer it to the oven to let it cook. The next thing that you need to do is add a tablespoon of oil to your pan and let that get nice and hot. If you bought your steak bacon wrapped as I did, what you can do is you can remove the bacon and let it cook first, and then use the remaining lard that's in there to sear the steak in that instead of using the oil. Either way, I don't cook my steak with the bacon on, and the reason I don't is because I like crispy bacon. I've tried cooking this enough with the bacon on to know that it will just never get crispy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook the bacon first. I'm actually going to reserve that bacon to make a compound butter for the steak, which I'll show you in a different video. Let's get started. All right, while this bacon is cooking, I'm going to go ahead and season the steak. First of all, there's no need for this toothpick anymore now that the bacon is in the skillet. And next, we're just going to go ahead and season this liberally on both sides. Again, the seasoning, a liberal seasoning, will help promote a nice brown, crusted, and tasty exterior as this steak cooks. We want to go ahead and leave all that awesome bacon grease in the pan because we're going to use that to help sear the steak, add some additional flavor as it cooks. Now we're ready to drop the steak. And I follow very strict timing guidelines for searing the steak. I'm gonna cook it for 3 minutes on one side, and then I'm gonna flip it and cook it for 1 minute on the other side. Can you hear that at home? Can you hear that steak sear? If delicious could make a sound, that would be it. All right, the steak is cooked on this side for 3 minutes, so I'm gonna flip it now and let it cook on the other side for just 1 minute. Look at that great, crusted, tasty exterior on that steak. That's gonna provide some nice crunch once we bite into it. Now that the steak is seared on this side for 1 minute, I'm gonna go ahead and take this pan and transfer it over to the oven, where again, I have this oven heating at 435 degrees. We've placed that steak in the middle rack and we're gonna allow it to cook in there for about another 6 or 8 minutes. As I mentioned earlier, there's absolutely no need to flip the steak as it cooks. So why are we using the oven today? Well, while we're cooking a filet, this method works well for any thick cut steak. Any steak that's 1.5 inches thick or greater. The reason we can't just cook it on the stovetop is because of the thickness. If we only cooked it there, what would happen is it would take A, a very long time, and B, the exterior would become actually burnt. And once it burns, it will provide a really bitter flavor. And trust me, I know I've messed a few up in my time. So what we're gonna do for really thick steaks is, again, put them on the stovetop, move them to the oven. This method works really well with fillets like we're cooking today, porterhouse, T-bones, and ribeyes, just to name a few. All right, so we're gonna pull this steak out. This steak's been in the oven for about 10 minutes. If you're comfortable with the feel method, you can try using that, or you can never go wrong with an instant read thermometer. I suggest pulling the steak out of here at about 140 degrees. And once you remove the steak, you'll let it cool for about 5 to 10 minutes or let it rest. During that resting period, the temperature of the steak will actually rise an additional 5 to 10 degrees. Before I put the steak in the oven, I thought it might take 6 to 8 minutes, but you need to know at home that not all ovens cook at the same temperature, even if they say the same degree on the outside. So this steak took a little bit longer than what I anticipated, but we'll be back in about 5 minutes and we'll cut it open and see how it looks. Okay, so this steak is now cooled for 5 minutes. Let's cut it open and see what it looks like. Look at that right there. It's a perfectly cooked medium to medium rare color. As I've said before, there's absolutely no need to spend $50 at a steakhouse when you can make this right in your own kitchen. The filet mignon is often known as the king of steaks. And what do kings do? They battle for supremacy. And while there is no actual gold at stake here today, we'll throw down the gauntlet cooking 3-way filet mignon. This is a thick cut, so we'll need both direct and indirect heat, but we're bringing that heat a few different ways. First, we'll use the traditional method to grill over high heat and then finish with indirect heat. For the second method, we're using the sous vide machine with the steak in a vacuum sealed bag underwater, then quickly seared. And the third method, we'll use the traditional reverse sear, using indirect heat from the oven and then searing over high heat. These three kings are gonna battle for supremacy, and I alone will decide their fate. Why? Because I'm king of this kitchen. You didn't think this was a democracy, did you? We recently purchased an entire 9-pound beef tenderloin and broke it down into fillets. We've included the link for that video in the description below. Food safety is no accident, ladies and gentlemen. If you buy a filet in the store, you're gonna pay over $20 a pound. But if you buy it and break it down yourself, you'll pay closer to $12 a pound. We've trimmed these into 8-ounce fillets. Now the first thing we're gonna do, all these are gonna touch olive oil at some point, but for this steak going on the grill right here, we'll apply that first. Now we wanna season them all the same way so the armies are evenly matched. We're using our Big Tasty Steak Rub to season all three. It's a rub we created and the recipe can be found in the description below and on our website. Also, you'll notice that these are all tied to help them cook evenly. However, the butcher's twine used for the grill should be soaked in water first to prevent it from burning. This one right here will be placed over a screaming hot fire and cooked for about 2 minutes per side, and then moved to the indirect heat to finish to temperature, which will take about 10 minutes. Next, we're going to get this one in a bag, vacuum seal it, and cook it under water using our sous vide machine for 2 hours at 131 degrees Fahrenheit. After 2 hours, we'll sear it in a cast iron skillet for 30 seconds aside. Finally, we're gonna place this one on a rack and get it in the oven at about 265 degrees until it reaches that internal temperature of 130 degrees. Then we're gonna sear it for 30 seconds aside. This is gonna be a bit of a balancing act to get them to finish all at the same time, but some good planning and a little video magic will help get the trick done. Now there's advantages for each method. Cooking over direct heat is the fastest way to get the food from this cutting board right into my belly. The next, using the traditional reverse sear, allows for more even cooking throughout, but takes a little bit longer than direct heat. And finally, the sous vide method is a true set it and forget it method. We're gonna try to cook all of these to an internal temperature of 130 degrees. So follow me and let's get started. To see who reigns supreme. Anyway. Salud. We're almost done. We have the one on the grill done. We're just gonna drop these two here in for 30 seconds. As you can see, 30 seconds per side. As you can see, I'm enjoying a nice cold brew. Nothing goes better with a steak than one of these bad boys. We're waiting for this butter and olive oil mixture to get nice and hot. We're gonna get this pan screaming hot before we drop these in. Okay. This is the reverse sear going in right here. And this is our sous vide going in right here. I got my timer going so I know when it's cooked for 30 seconds per side. These are already cooked to temperature on the interior, so we're just doing this step to bring that nice color, that nice Maillard effect to the exterior of these steaks, make them real nice and pretty. Okay, so all of these steaks are done cooking. We got them done at really close to about the same time. We tried to hit an internal temperature of 130 degrees. And before I cut them open, I just want to bring your attention to just the coloration difference. Here's the one that we cooked over fire. And as you can see, that has a real nice mahogany color all around it. This is our reverse sear. This has a real rich, nice brown color on the exterior of it. And this over here is our sous vide filet. And this doesn't have as good of a color. As you can see, some of the plastic from the vacuum seal really got imprinted into that steak, so it doesn't look as pretty. I did sear both of these over a high heat for 30 seconds, and this one just did not caramelize as nicely as our reverse sear did. So let's cut them open and see what they look like on the inside. First, we're gonna start with this one, which was, again, cooked over direct heat first. Let's take a look. Look at that, we have some really nice color on that. That one looks fantastic. So before I test these, we're gonna cut into all three of them. Let's take a look here. Here we go, this is our traditional reverse sear in the oven and then over the hot skillet. Again, another great steak. Look at that color. That looks absolutely phenomenal. That's just what you want. And that color on both of these looks fantastic. Now this one doesn't look as good on the outside as I mentioned, but let's see how it looks on the inside. Oh, it's super soft and tender, I can tell you that already. All right. And again, not as pretty on the outside, but that feels just so soft. So let's dig in. I'll start over here with the one over fire. And we'll try to do small bites so I can actually talk after eating this. Let's go. It's a damn good steak. It's really good. You can taste a lot of the flavor, both from the rub and from the fire. It has some good, deep, smoky notes. Now, here's our traditional reverse sear. Let's check it out. Again, this one has a great crust. I was really surprised by the great crust that this one has. No one's gonna complain about either one of these steaks. These are two phenomenal steaks. You gotta remember, we're dealing with the kings here. And as long as you don't overcook them, they're gonna be tender and tasty. I think one thing I wanna bring your attention to is you'll notice this one is a little bit more done around the exterior. That would be expected when you're cooking over fire. It's gonna get the exterior a little bit more done. And as you can see, this one's more pink end to end. And you'll see the same is true with this one. Now this one took over 2 hours to cook. It doesn't look as good on the outside, but let's see how it tastes. All right, that's gonna be too big. Let's cut that in half. Wow. The sous vide is the most tender. I mean, we're dealing with some tender steaks here, and even among the tender steaks, this one wins. I think the one over fire wins on absolute flavor profile. I think the fire and the reverse sear are pretty closely tied when it comes to look, but when it comes to tenderness, absolutely, our sous vide wins. So it's really hard to pick a champion here. If I had to, I'm gonna go with the old fire seared steak. It's quick. This took about 15 minutes to get cooked all the way through, as opposed to 2 hours over here. Again, the nice thing about this is that you can really set it and forget it. I mean, that's the really beautiful thing. You don't have to worry about an internal temperature. So even though this one is not the most tender, I'm gonna crown our direct roast, our direct seared, and then indirect cooked filet mignon. I'm gonna crown that king of this tournament.